Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Healing Loudly, the podcast. I'm your co host, Dana Skurlock.
And I'm your co-host, Ani Jajurian.
Nice to see you, my friend.
My God, it's always so good to see you, Dana. Your
I know.
bright and shining smile just makes
I
me so
know.
happy.
I had to do a little red lip today just to cheer myself up. It's a dreary day here in New York, and I hope you have some sunshine out there in LA.
We sure do. I'm lucky. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very, very fortunate to be in the sunshine today.
Listen, you deserve it, okay? How are you feeling today, though? Is there like a particular word or phrase that you feel like represents how you're feeling this afternoon?
I'm feeling excited. Do you know why I'm feeling excited, Dana? Because today is the day that you and I are launching this podcast on social
You're
media officially. It is
right.
officially the day that we've been waiting for. We've been so nervous about this day, but
So
honestly,
nervous.
I feel ready. I feel very proud of our work. I feel very
Yes.
excited to be doing this with you and to get to
So
talk
sweet.
about all of this with you every week. So, my word today, excited as fuck. I'm
As
ready.
fuck. Love that exclamation point, period.
Exclamation point. What about you? What's your word today?
God. You know what came to mind, which is so weird, but I was an English major, so I'm gonna go with it. I just keep feeling like a semicolon, which is like it separates 2 independent clauses within a sentence, and I just feel
Like
like
lit major.
in the middle. I feel in the middle of something, like things in my life that have already happened, and then we're at this semicolon portion, and there's gonna be another independent phrase and clause coming afterwards, and I feel like I'm right in the middle, like a semicolon.
Ooh, okay, what came before? What was before and what do you think is coming after?
I'm not sure. I know what's come before. I know what I've been proud of. I know what I've been disappointed by, and I'm just feeling like a new phase is coming. I think that's maybe new phase is the phrase that comes to mind. But yes, represented grammatically as a semicolon. So
Oh, that is the most you coded, you branded thing. Like, of course, of course, you're like connecting your life experiences through the lens of literature and grammar. I think it's
I'm actually a
so
grammar nerd. Like
Dana.
I love it. It is. It's very me.
I think it's interesting that you bring up being in this like semicolon place because it's easy to like look back on where we've been, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to see where we're heading
Mm.
when you're just trusting the process and when you're just trusting that you're like following your joy and you're following your passions. You might not know exactly what comes next. And I personally believe that those are the moments that are the most special because you know there's a new chapter opening, but because you can't quite put your finger on how it's going to go, I think there's excitement in that, but there's also fear in that. And not projecting fear onto you at all. If you don't feel fear, I love that. But people tend to feel fearful of the unknown without realizing that like fear and excitement live in the same place in the body. And if we can just switch our perspective, something that we might be like nervous about or afraid of, we might actually be excited about it if we're just like, wait, I get to do this, or like, look at all the positive possibilities that could come from this, as opposed to worst case scenario.
You are so right that fear and excitement do feel like closely related sisters or like twins or something. Cause like, for example, like when I'm acting on stage or before I do a scene on film, I have a lot of what I would describe as stage fright, what they call it, in the industry.
Yeah.
Like you're scared and nervous and you're uncertain about how it's going to go and you have a lot riding on your performance. And so it can be really, really anxiety inducing. But thinking about it as excitement versus the fear of what could happen, why not be excited about what could happen? It lives in the same place. And so I think that is part of me feeling like the semicolon is that in between place and being slightly scared, but also excited about what potentially is coming in the future. But I love reframing it as excitement versus fear because obviously fear is like a negative connotation and it causes negative things in our mind and in our bodies. So it's great to have a different way of looking at it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a place for fear. There's always a place for excitement. One is not better than the other. We
Mm.
do want to feel the happier things, but letting yourself feel the full spectrum of those emotions that come with new chapters, because new chapters are as big. It's a whole new season. It's it's human. You're living in your human wholeness.
I am a whole human. A whole human.
Human.
I'm a whole human.
All right. Well, I would love for us to talk a little bit about what we were discussing in our last episode. And it was about men healing the femininity within them and how that's what's going to lead to more progress in the world. And also the episode before that, where we were talking about masks. I feel like it's a great transition into today's episode about queerness. So, Dana, right after we recorded our last episode, you know that I flew to Mexico City. So, I want to tell you a little story.
Yeah.
While I was on that flight, I don't usually watch movies when I'm like on a flight. I'll just sleep the entire time. I can
You
sleep
don't
anywhere.
watch movies while you're on flights?
No, girl, I sleep the entire time. I'm not even joking.
Wow, you're a master.
I will close my eyes and open my eyes, and we're there. We've landed.
Definitely done that before when I'm, like, drunk coming back from Mexico and was out till 4 AM, and then I sleep the whole flight too, but left to regular non-drunk Dana, a little bit harder, but I'm happy for you.
Thank thank you, thank you. Well, it is a gift, I will say. But so this time, this was a little different. Usually I do sleep on the flight, but this time I was like, "You know what? Let me watch a movie." So I'm scrolling through what movies they've got, and I find this film called Riley. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
Okay, I
What is it?
hadn't either. I had no idea what this film was, but I was like, "You know what? This seems interesting." Queer high school film. I was like, "Okay, let's see what's up." Basically, it's a movie about a high school athlete who's the star of the show, like absolute star. All these colleges want him. Great player, but he's closeted.
Mhm,
And he's closeted not only in the sense that he's not out publicly, but he also denies to himself what his own identity is. And so the entire film explores the relationship between queerness, someone who's openly queer. There's a character in the film played by Connor Story from Heated Rivalry.
oh, amazing.
We love him. He plays an openly gay character in this high school. Riley is the kid's last name. I actually don't know his first name. Riley is closeted, and it just shows the struggle, the emotional avoidance, the denial, the fear that people are conditioned to feel about not being straight. And
Mhm,
so as I'm watching this film, I was like, wow, this actually ties really perfectly into what we were talking about in the last episode. This film does a really good job of showing us the social pressures of
mhm.
being straight in order to fit into the patriarchal campaign of the American dream. And so this student is convinced that if he lives in his truth, that it would actually make his life a lot harder and a lot worse.
He's not wrong, ultimately. This country and many others make it very, very hard for queer people to exist in the fullness of their experience. So I can only imagine how incentivized somebody that is queer or trans is going to be to fit into the mainstream. I mean, it's so and it ties right into what we talked about in our first episode, the masks we wear. Like that is a 24/7 mask that you can't even take down when you're at home alone or when you're at home with your family, like or friends if you're in the closet. Like you literally have no outlet for your true expression of yourself. So I can't even imagine how painful that must be. How does Riley come to terms with this in the film? Like, obviously,
Oof.
they're struggling with their identity. And what is their specific identity? As a gay man?
I mean, he can't even say the word himself. He doesn't even want to admit that to himself, but he feels attracted to other men.
Mhm,
And one of his teammates is sort of towing the line between flirting with him and just doing normal guy behavior, like in the locker room and like seeing each other's bodies and sort of like getting a little bit touchy feely, but just enough so you're just bros, that kind of thing. And so this confusion starts to build with Riley's character. He starts to feel more confused. But as he's hiding this piece of his identity, he feels the social pressure from his teammates and from his best friend to date girls, specifically this one girl that he's really close friends with. And you hear him saying the things that we hear guys say in locker rooms, like, "Oh, yeah, like, I would fuck her," or, that kind of shit, when really he's not actually attracted to her. And so he's forcing himself to be attracted to her. But there's one place where you can't pretend that you're attracted to someone, and that's when you're being intimate with them.
Mhm, mhm.
And so there's a scene in this film where I mean, there's several scenes in this film where he and his girlfriend are trying to be intimate. She wants to, be open with him in that way, and it's not happening. And so she's taking it personally. She thinks that he doesn't like her. So the ways that other people I bring this up to say, the ways that people outside of them being folks who are hiding their identities for whatever reason, there are many reasons to do that. That behavior has an impact on the self-worth of other people as well.
That is super profound, Ani. I never would think of it that way, is that the way you feel about yourself is affecting the self-worth of others. But you know what? Beyond just, like, romantic relationships, your parental relationships, your familial relationships are going to be affected by how you see yourself. Like if you're raised by a mother who is insecure or, self-conscious about her weight or the way she looks, the pressure on women obviously is so high to fit in with a normative standard of beauty. That would then affect anybody who you're raising's self-worth or their feelings about their appearance. So we see it in other examples as well. I think that this film sounds really interesting, partly because it's another story about sports and closeted men in sports, which I think the gayest place on the planet is a locker room, like in
100%.
baseball or freaking football, where they're literally patting each other on the butt to say good job to one another or to joke around or to, tell somebody that they did something wrong. Like there's a lot of like physical contact happening between men in ways that they are comfortable expressing it, like if it has to do with sports. Whereas they probably wouldn't do it if they were like in public elsewhere. And it's like, why is there this delineation of like you are compartmentalizing yourself and your personality and putting on a mask again? Whereas like when you're playing sports, when you're, experiencing winning and losing and these really high stakes with other men, it brings out this physical contact between them. And so it's just interesting to me. It's like their emotions are freer because they're playing sports. There's less of a block between like their disappointments in themselves. Cause like in sports, there's no problem for a man to express disappointment or like vulnerable emotion around winning or losing a game. If it was about a divorce or about, breaking up with their girlfriend, they wouldn't want to be crying in public. But if it's for a sports game, it's completely, viewed as normal and not any, taking away from anybody's masculinity in the eyes of the
Right.
public. We also see that coupled with physical touch coming into play in scenarios where you are feeling able to be vulnerable. I just wonder how many of these men that are in these types of environments would prefer to continue having that, being able to have that type of behavior outside of just sports, or is it like the sports provided that outlet and that's part of why they like the sport in addition to the actual like physical activity? They may not even be I'm sure it's subconscious, as 99% of the things that human beings do. It's not coming from intention. It's usually coming from, a source internally that you're not even aware of. But I do wonder if perhaps that's what attracts men, a large population of the men, to wanna play sports. It's
Maybe
aspirational.
unconsciously.
Yes, and unconsciously, it's a place you can
Yeah.
actually be yourself and be yourself around other men, and that includes a lot of
It's
physical
the
touch.
only it's the only socially acceptable way to be around and to be intimate in a way with other men without it being a problem, without having to actually come out and live the life like they say in this movie that would be a lot harder for you to live. It's like it's like it gives them just enough. Just enough. However, just enough is never going to feel fulfilling. That's like when you taste something really yummy and you're thinking about that dessert or that food for the next, like, year, and you're like, "Man, I can't wait to go back to that restaurant to eat that one thing that I ate because that was so freaking good." And then at some point, I mean, the thought of it just becomes more and more intense. So I think for people who are still in a place where they're not safe enough to come out. And I
Mhm.
use the word safe because it's not safe for everyone to come out. For some people's families will not respond well to it. Some people's cultures don't respond well to it. Some people have beliefs that you'll go to hell if you're
Yeah.
open about that. So for those who where it's not safe enough for them to actually accept their full identity and to come out, there will always be that longing internally that they won't be able to fulfill, and that void won't be able to be filled by anything else.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to the next point about this film is that that longing that Riley has and that he keeps pushing down and pretending like isn't real because he doesn't want to let down his dad, he doesn't want to let down his teammates, he doesn't want to let down himself, I suppose. It starts to come out in the form of anger
Uh-huh.
and aggression. So that inability to live the life that you want to live, to be the person that you deserve to be because you don't think that it's right to be that person or because there's shame attached to it and there's fear attached to it and there's guilt attached to it, it starts to come out in the form of really aggressive behaviors, like what we were talking about in last week's episode.
That is absolutely true that I think disappointment of, the disappointment you feel between like who you wanna be and who you are now causes a lot of heartache and manifests itself as aggression and anger, particularly in men. I think with, like, women and female identifying people, that disappointment exists, but I think it's exhibited differently and is more, like, internalized.
Yeah.
With men, that's why you see them committing 90% of the violent crimes. That's why you see them participating in misogyny. It feels and racism. It feels good to kick down on someone else when you're feeling so poorly about yourself, and are so disappointed in yourself. And unfortunately, in this like heterosexist society in Western culture, it makes you feel like a failure for being queer and having these feelings for people of the same sex as you. I think that what we're learning and evolving into is a society that is not delineated so closely by such like binary terms like you're either straight or you're gay. There's so many shades in between, and I love that the culture has moved forward to really start to color those things in. It's like having like the Crayola box, and it used to just there was like the classic one that just had like blue, red, yellow, and then they started coming out with like all of these the huge box that had all of those different shades. Like that's where burnt sienna came from. They had like a whole section
Yeah.
just and I loved it because I went to an all-white school and I didn't always have skin color crayons to color myself in when you're, like, drawing
That's
yourself or your
right.
family, and we're different colors. So when we got the big box of crayons, it actually made a big difference because you could be more nuanced with the skin colors of the people that you were drawing. I'm no artist by any means, like, of any sort of visual artist, but I remember that distinctly. So, like, I felt
No, but
seeing
talk
that
about representation.
I know. Like, I don't think that was intentional from Crayola. They just were coming up with all these different shades of blue, like, of everything. But there were 84 crayons in there. And so, like, I feel like the analogy toward, regarding queerness is that you don't have to pick just one shade and the shade is so far away from you. There's so many different ways to identify now. And I know that some people get very frustrated because they feel like there's just something new to learn all the time. And, how many identities can people possibly have? And the truth is, as many people as there are, that's how many different identities there are. And that includes your sexuality or your gender expression. And so I think queerness, that like catch all term that I use with such fondness, is something that represents that giant Crayola box. It means that everything is included. You
Yes.
can find the very specific shade that works for you and that identifies and represents you. And that experience of just feeling represented is very healing. And people who aren't feeling that, as you say, you see them expressing themselves in really aggressive, angry ways that harm other people. Now, my question for you about this film, bringing it back to
Yeah.
Riley, number 1, what is the conclusion of all this agonizing? Like, does he eventually come out? Does he choose to stay in the closet? And then my second question is, what are the demographics of the people in the film? Like, are they all white? Are they all middle class? Like, what's the sort of socioeconomic profile of the people in the film?
Yeah, no, these are great questions. Well, for the most part, everyone seems to be closer to white,
Mhm.
and there's some supporting characters that are people of color. I'm not shocked that that's the case. And everyone, again, for the most
Color
part,
me surprised.
seems to be middle class, upper middle class, doing pretty well. Not like super wealthy, but doing pretty well.
Mhm.
And at the end of it, he does end up, well, spoiler, if anyone wants to go watch this film, I would say, move past this section now. But for those of you who don't care, I will spoil it for you. Essentially, he does end up breaking up with the girl that he was dating, and he is honest with her. But in being honest with her and saying that he thinks he's attracted to guys, he still can't say the word out loud. And she asks him to. And she's supportive of him. She's like, oh my God, like, I will love you. Like, as you are and for who you are and what you are. And he was like, I don't think I'm ready to say out loud yet what that is. So he is at the end of it, he's starting to come to terms with the reality of who he really is inside. And he's starting to come to terms with maybe that's not such a bad thing.
So they kinda
But
leave it a cliffhanger, an emotional cliffhanger of, we don't know where Riley's gonna go next. We're hoping he moves towards coming out of the closet,
yeah.
but for now, he's only, come out to this girlfriend of his.
Yeah. And throughout the film he does explore secret homosexual experiences.
Oh, a little sneaky link.
A little sneaky link, and as I was watching that, watching this, like, quote, "straight white man who is just the pinnacle of athleticism and the American dream, cosplay straight,
Yeah.
hide his real attraction to men, and then on the down low, get on Grindr and have certain experiences and then pretend like they didn't happen." I couldn't help but think about conservatives and Republican politicians who do the exact same thing and play around with the safety and the well-being and the quality of life of all queer people in this country because they are so afraid to come out themselves and because they are so ashamed of their own internal truths that they actually double down and say that those things are bad and then live a completely separate double life on the down low.
I Humiliation is such a powerful emotion, and I think that people experience it at very specific times in their life, and they will do, because I don't think it happens a lot, like a true humiliation. There's being embarrassed, and then there's, like, feeling humiliated, and I think once
Yeah.
it happens to someone once, they will do anything to not feel it again.
Mhm.
So what you find with a lot of these, stories about conservative legislators who turns out that they've, been going to drag clubs or dressing in drag or, sleeping with other, it's usually always men too. Like I've not heard of a lot of like conservative women coming out and we find out that they're actually lesbians. It seems to be like a male phenomenon of this like intense homophobic, anti-queer rhetoric coming from the very people who are participating in the culture on their own terms. And,
The call is
you know,
coming from inside the house.
it's always coming from inside the house, and it's so delicious to me when they get caught. Like, I just eat it up with a spoon because 'cause I'm just like, "This is your just desserts." Because my thing is like, it's one thing to be in the closet and choose that for your life. There's many, many queer people in history who have been married to, people of the opposite sex and just hid their sexuality their entire lives. I hate that they had to do that, but at least it
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily harming someone else. To go out of your house every day and denigrate other queer people while you are also doing the same thing in your private life is just the height of hypocrisy. And it's so upsetting that that is how incentivized being homophobic is. They probably ran on that campaign. That's how they got elected, is
Oh,
playing into the
100%.
history of homophobic people in their district and then turn around and you represent the very thing that you are allowing these people to hate. But that's, I think, why you see these specific cases. It's almost always a white male because they're the ones with the most privilege. So staying straight, being straight, promoting heterosexist ideas is extremely beneficial to them. It wouldn't
But
behoove
why?
help me to, like, pretend to be straight, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think my life would be any more or less oppressed if I was a lesbian. It's already pretty oppressed, so, like, why hide it, you know what I mean? Or go on a platform pretending to hate gay people when I am. Like, but for straight white men, I think that the benefit is so high, it goes to show you how privileged they are, that they would go to these lengths.
Okay, so my question is, because you're absolutely right, like, the hypocrisy is absolutely insane. Why is it so important for specifically straight white men or just men in general? Because I see it in my culture as well. Why is it so important for men to be as far away from, again, femininity and queerness as possible. Why
Mm.
is it so important to play this role? Why is it so important for them to wear this mask and wear it so proudly when it's the complete opposite of who they really are and what they really want?
I mean, my first guess is misogyny, to be honest, and, like, any
Whoa.
I think that queerness, gayness has some connection to femininity to it in most people's brains, even though it doesn't have to. Men could be having sex with other men and be very masculine presenting and very masculine, have very masculine traits. But I think that there is something inherently vulnerable about two men being together and one person is going to physically take the role of the receiving person during intercourse. And I think that that's why you have all these straight guys constantly making jokes about anal sex all the time. And like, everybody wants to like make jokes. Is so and so the top or the bottom? Like, it's just like corny straight people jokes. And it's like so annoying. But I think part of it is because they're
Yeah.
obsessed with that idea because it shows like, or insinuates some sort of dominance. And it's part of the reason
Mm.
why men have felt since time immemorial that women are somehow less than is physical prowess, and I think just the mechanics of sexual intercourse. They really, like, view that as, like, "Oh, now you've really become vulnerable. You're really weaker." And I think that men will do anything to avoid that, and that's why you see so many of them that are so willing to compartmentalize their life to hide this fact because it to be considered feminine in any way is what's humiliating to them. That's what about queerness they hate so much.
I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right about that, and I even see this in the queer community. There are so many men who are out, but are still struggling with their own identities and with what it means for them to be out and what it means for them to be gay. Like, there are a lot of men who I feel like will use the label gay if it means that they can still be super masculine and super manly, and
Mhm.
they sort of shy away from anything that might make them seem like a feminine gay. So at the
Mhm.
end of the day, with what you're saying, it does feel like it always ties back to the vulnerability and the sensitivity of the feminine side of who we are,
Mhm.
and women, and misogyny, and being conditioned to hate softness because men are taught that they're not supposed to be soft. They're not supposed to receive. They're supposed to be in control. They're supposed to be the ones that are on top, if you will, pun intended.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and I think what's fascinating is, like, even for 2 feminists like us, 90% of this conversation about queerness so far has been about queer men. And that's another issue, even with this film, Riley, that you're talking about, like, it's all from the perspective of a closeted man. And I would say, like, most of the queer cinema that I've seen, especially those that are in the mainstream, so much of it is male-centered. And so much of
Mm.
the rhetoric, the anti-gay rhetoric from the executive branch and the legislative branch of our government is usually against gay men specifically versus like I don't hear a lot of people having as many problems or being so disgusted by lesbianism in some ways. Like
Oh,
it
because they're attracted to it.
that's all yeah, that's a whole other fetishizing lesbianism is like a whole
No,
other
it's just a fetish for them. They just think it's hot. Oh, women with other women, that's just hot, so they don't really care.
yeah. And there's no power imbalance. It's two women who are below me in power in terms of power and status. Choosing to be with each other doesn't affect me. Men who are at my status level and have my level of privilege choosing to do those things shakes up the status quo. What does it mean to be a straight white man if half of them are gay? Like, what is our position now as men? I think queerness disrupts the patriarchy, and the patriarchy supports
That
racism, and the patriarchy supports capitalism, whereby we have all this wealth hoarding at the top and people are starving. That is part of the reason I think a lot of men in particular and white men, specifically, are so homophobic and so anti-queer. And why they go into politics about it is because they are desperately trying to hold on to, like you said, control, which is what makes people feel safe, makes people not feel humiliated, makes people feel like they're the ones deciding their own fate. And I think control is so intoxicating, and queerness is about not being controlled to some degree. Like it feels like something that is outside of control,
that
and I think that that scares a lot of people.
Dana, okay, you hit the nail on the head. I looked up the definition of queerness just to
Oh my
see
god,
what
let's hear
comes
it.
up. And essentially, it says that queerness is this umbrella, this blanket term that falls outside of traditional, strictly defined social norms. So, not necessarily just for sexual orientation or gender, but just queerness in general. Something or someone, a behavior or a characteristic that falls outside of the traditionally structured social norms that we know. And so that's why I think, to your point, queerness is so dangerous to patriarchy. Queerness is so dangerous to be honest, the government. Because if people accept that we as humans are so much more than just the binary, that we are so much more than just the strict gender expectations of female and male, that there are so many shades in between, that there are so many different ways to express ourselves, whether it's the way that you dress or the way that you speak or the way that you do your hair or the person that you choose to spend your life with. There's so much in between. And if people actually find the freedom to do that, then that means that they can't be controlled anymore. And the government loves to control us via fear. And so, if the government can create a common enemy and make the common person afraid of being like that enemy, of the consequences that come with being that enemy. For example, having your rights stripped away, not having healthcare, not having social safety precautions, fearing for your life in any place that you go, then people are going to do what they can to not be that and to pretend like they're not that. And if they can remain in within like the confines of gender and sexuality, then there's safety there. They're, again, going back to what we said in like one of the first episodes, they're part of the tribe. And if you're part of the tribe, then there's no danger to you. Just don't stick out, don't stand out in any way, don't be authentic, don't rock the boat, and you will be perfectly safe and you can just go about living your life. When
And
really underneath all that, are you really going to be happy? No.
yeah, because the complexity of the human experience, it doesn't allow for extended inauthenticity, I think, ultimately. Like,
Mm,
people do it, but it's at a great cost, you know? And so it's really interesting to me, like, just thinking about subversiveness and like how you choose to upend the system, like in what ways you choose to do it. Like there are some things within the binary system that I fit in very, very closely. Like I liked Barbie dolls. You know, I was assigned female at birth. I liked Barbie dolls. I played with unicorns. Like there were so many things that fit in with the binary with my own personality. And then there's some things that don't. But what's interesting is like, I think because I was in the minority racially, I understood completely very early on what it feels like to not be a part of the entire group. And so it doesn't seem as weird to me that there's going to be people that don't fit in sexually or with their sexual orientation or gender expression with the exact like system that's in place because I didn't fit in with the white children I went to school with. We ate different things, we did different things, we listen to different music. And so I got the picture very early on, like, oh, not everybody is exactly alike. Like, and you can be a very small minority within a very large majority. So like as a queer person, if you're like the only one in the entire school that's out or something like that, I mean, I can only, empathize with like how isolating that is and how painful that is. And I think that something else that the film that you mentioned, Riley, like reminded me of is just like the process of being in the closet and coming out of the closet. Like,
mm,
everybody talks about their coming out story, like, interviewers are always wanting to ask, like, famous actors who are out, like, "When did you come out? What age?" And obviously, as a straight person, you never get asked that, and so it's a real imbalance of experience. But I do think that when it comes to queer art, queer cinema, what I've found often is that it is so much entwined with the process of being in the closet and coming out. Like that is usually the main crux of the story. And so I'm just wondering, I was listening to,
mm.
some other programs and just the romanticizing of the secrecy. Like the being in the closet is in some ways exciting. It's like you talked about Connor's story from Heated Rivalry. Like Heated Rivalry is people are obsessed with it because number one, it has hot sex scenes in it, but I think also because
It
it's
is a
the
hot show, I'm not gonna lie.
and the intimacy coordinator, if they weren't
Loved
really
it.
having sex, wow, you killed it, sis. Because like
We love
it,
Heated Rivalry over here.
my God, it's great. I mean, and I have a friend that's like reading all the books, and so like it's. I think there's going to be more to come because there's like 10 books in the series. But
Definitely.
I just think that Brokeback Mountain is another great example of this. And
Mm,
Carol, that movie with Kate Blanchett and Rooney Mara, it is all about the longing and the like secret looks in the movie. Riley, you described Connor's story, like touching him in, the locker room in a way that's salacious in some way. And I think that there's something that people respond to about like the secrecy of being in the closet, even though it's actually a terrible, awful, painful experience for many people. But I'm wondering if there's like, you know, people listening or yourself, like, are there any benefits to being in the closet outside of sort of like, fitting in with the mainstream? But like, are there any good things about being in the closet? Does it make sex more exciting? Does it, like I just now in thinking about that,
mm.
yeah, the process of being in the closet and coming out of the closet is so romanticized. Is it because there's something to it that like, do people like it because it's private? Some people prefer to stay in the closet because when I was growing up, a lot of it was like, well, we don't talk about that. Or, if a
Right.
family member was queer, well, they've never said anything to me about it, so we don't discuss it type, don't ask, don't tell shit. And so while I'm sure that's painful, I also wonder if people like the privacy of it.
I think definitely. There's definitely people who feel more secretive about it, maybe because they just prefer that.
Mm,
I will say that in my experience with my coming out, it was one of those kids who just always knew who and what I loved, and I never really questioned it. So, as a kid, like, I'd be watching S Club 7 was this pop music group from the UK that also had a TV show, like a narrative TV show, okay? And it was made up of girls and guys. And I don't know how old I was, maybe like 6, 7, watching this show like, "Wow, I wanna marry every single one of them." Dana, I'd be
greedy
sitting there
bitch.
like, there's like 7 of these singers for and they were musicians, so, right, like, the musical side of me was like, there's no better human, like, they're all beautiful, they're all British, they all can sing, and they're all fun and
Yeah.
funny, like, I'm in love with literally all of them.
Um,
So so I grew up knowing that I was capable of having this attraction to both guys and girls. But I never felt ashamed of it until and this is how people start to build those masks. This is how people start to build their external, ego outside of authenticity. I learned how many people in my culture were homophobic and thought that liking someone of the same gender or sex is not only against who we are as a people, but against our religion. So I grew up Armenian Apostolic Christian, which is similar to like Greek Orthodox or like Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity, very similar. Now, I don't necessarily identify as a Christian anymore, and that's a totally different conversation. But
we'll get to that conversation in a future episode. Don't you worry.
that is definitely its own conversation. I do love God, but not through the lens of Christianity. But so I learned how homophobic people are in my culture because in part of Christianity, which I know also plays a huge role in the politics of the United States and of the homophobia in the United States and what leads people to believe that loving someone of the same gender is not right. But anyways, I bring up my own experience because my coming out was way later than most people. I didn't come out as a teenager. It wasn't until right before I got married that I came out to my parents. Okay. And I came out to my parents separately. And I don't know why I felt the need to, but my body was telling me to. And if I've learned anything over the years as a somatic practitioner especially, is to listen to the like inner truths and impulses of my body. And my body was saying, you need to come out. You need to be honest with your parents. I was like, okay, I guess I will. So I was like maybe 26. Yeah, I told my mom and she was surprised and she actually was like, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" And I was like, "You've got to be fucking kidding me."
Because I whenever I hear that or anybody, I go, "Because the person didn't feel safe." That is what that means. They did not
Yeah.
feel safe enough to disclose that to you, otherwise they would have. Which also means that you have to broach those conversations if you're a parent. I think, like, with other relationships, it would be more awkward to do this, but as a parent, this is why you have to talk to your kids about all of these issues, including sex, including with sexual orientation, queerness, etcetera. People are so wound up about exposing children to queerness as if they're not
Right.
gonna be exposed to it in the world or could be exposed to it internally because they are queer and are gonna grow
Already
up
know.
queer. I know. It's just representation. It's just showing them that these people exist in the world and that is a possibility for you. It's not about turning anybody queer, although what would be the problem with that? It's like already the argument to me is like
No.
inherent to saying it's a negative. But also,
Girl,
it's
if queerness was a choice, I would not like men.
you know what?
Humans are the only species in the world that are expected to mate with their actual, like, oppressor.
You
So
Ani, hallelujah. That is a
if
word.
queerness was a choice, do you think that I would be attracted to men, considering all the statistics of how much men put women in danger?
You're so
Absolutely the actual fuck not. Let me be the
right.
not the first person to say this. Many people have said this before, but let me tell all y'all, it is not a choice. It has never been a choice. If it was a choice,
I
that's not the
wouldn't
choice I would make.
say, okay? Like, truly, we're more likely to be killed by a man. We're more likely to endure physical and emotional abuse from a man. You can't even go on a date without, like, could get sexually assaulted and murdered today. Like, I mean,
Right,
that's
sending your
me.
location to your friends. "Hey, I'm going on a first date with someone. This is where we're gonna be." Why do we have to do that? Anyways, it's not a choice, if anyone was ever questioning that. But I bring this up because going back to, like, coming out, right? Then I came out to my dad. Didn't go amazingly, but wasn't horrible either. Didn't go the way that I hoped it would go, but was better than I thought it might go. I was not, disowned. However, my dad said something that really broke my heart, and this also goes back to what we were talking about with the Riley film, which is like, do you want to be living a life that's harder than it has to be, knowing the social circumstances and the way that queer people are treated? So when I told my dad, his response was, "Well, it's a good thing then that you're marrying a man." And I love my dad so fucking much. I don't blame him for his response whatsoever. I know that he said that because he knows just witnessing the world, hearing how people talk in my community,
Mm,
the gossip, the rumors, how much harder he thinks my life would have been if that wasn't the case. So in his eyes, he thought he was protecting me by saying something like that, right? So I can't blame him for that, even if that's not exactly what I wanted to hear, you know? But at the end of the day, I'm bringing this up because when I ended my marriage, and I want to make something clear, the reason why I left my ex-husband was not because of my queerness. There were many, many reasons why I left. However, in the wake of the ending of our relationship, my queerness was weaponized against me and used publicly as a reason for me leaving him so that he essentially would be admonished of any wrongdoing or accountability or responsibility for the trajectory of the relationship. If I hadn't come out to my parents before I got married, they essentially would have found out via my ex-husband because he outed me to his parents. He outed me to his parents and then used that as the reason for why I was leaving him. My experience, though, did push me to come out publicly because I knew that if I didn't say it myself and if I wasn't honest about who I am on my own terms, then people would have been gossiping and spreading rumors about me. And so,
so you felt that you had to come out publicly because your ex-husband had told his parents, and then you were afraid they were going to tell other people?
yeah,
I see. I see.
yeah.
That's
as the
really
reason
exciting.
for the end of the marriage, which is sad to me because if queerness wasn't so taboo,
Mhm.
if it wasn't seen as such a bad, horrible, sinful thing, when really queerness is just, I love people and I love expressing myself in ways that maybe you feel uncomfortable with. I have freed myself from the shackles of discomfort that was conditioned into me. I do not feel ashamed about who I am or how I express myself. But the fact that other people feel so ashamed about it, it can be used as a device to essentially ruin people's reputations
Mhm.
and ruin their relationships to other people and ruin community, a sense of belonging. And the intention there, unfortunately, was to throw a wrench into my sense of belonging and almost to punish me.
Oh, yeah, it was for sure to punish you. You know what also annoys me about the, like, argument about, "Well, your life's gonna be harder," because I got into an argument once with, like, an ex-friend of mine about queer people being able to adopt children, and she was very, like, against it, and she said, "I have no problem with gay people," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." She's like, "I have no problem with gay people, it's just that it's making the kids' life harder by giving them to gay parents," and I was like, "The reason that they would have a hard time is from people like you who are homophobic, so that it's all the same thing, cure the homophobia, and then you wouldn't have any problem with this."
That's
Being
right.
black is harder than being other races. What does that mean? We should just stop existing because it's harder for us because of what other groups choose to do to us? I shouldn't have kids because, I'm making their life hard by making some more black people. Like, that argument is so silly to me. But I understand, and I'm not a parent, so, like, I understand as a father wanting to really have the best, easiest, most fruitful life for your children, and anything that is going to potentially hinder their experience, you wouldn't wanna see them have to go through it. But also, as women,
Yeah.
if you are that concerned about your daughter, what you can do is dismantle the patriarchy. That is much more harmful to us than being queer.
You're not
I
wrong,
don't think
Dana.
that parents or men think about it that way. It's like, you're so concerned for women and you so wanna keep us safe, that you wanna block drag queens from bathrooms and trans women from bathrooms and things like you're so worried about women. We have a rapist who is the president of the United States. So don't talk to me about how you care about women. You don't. You don't care about women's safety. You care about holding on to the paradigms that leave you in power at the expense of other people, and you're hoping that nobody else is gonna notice, and there's too many of us pushing against that system now, that's, I think, why you see this vehement right-wing movement happening here and in Europe. I like and honestly, I would say in other parts of the world too. It's a reaction to how far we've actually gotten in terms of allowing people to have their own experience and not judging them for it, and having more shades in the crayon box. People are freaking out because if there's not only 4 shades and you're the one that controls the 4 shades, like, they're freaking out that they're losing a grip on what? Their control, just like we were talking about. That I think is, like, the theme of the episode. Queerness,
Queerness and control.
queerness and control, like, that is what people do not like about queerness. That's what they don't like about feminism. That's what they don't like about any social justice movement, is that they're relinquishing some level of control and power over another group. My question for people like that is, why do you want to have power over other people? Why is that so important to you? To, like, be a part of a system and lead a system that there are people saying doesn't work for them. Why would you wanna force them to continue to do that?
Because
As
it
a
makes
human
them feel
being, you know you
powerful.
couldn't work it. Makes them feel
It makes them
powerful.
feel powerful. I mean, only someone that is so deeply insecure within their own sense of belonging and their own sense of self-worth would want power over other people.
Yeah,
That's in my opinion, that's the only explanation here. And also greed, and I think that's in there too, but for the most part, people just want power. What better way to make yourself feel powerful than to punch down on other people
yeah.
just to raise yourself up? We talked a little bit about the response to queerness in my culture. And even
Mhm.
in the first episode when I shared about the composer that I was gonna work with who asked me to hide my queerness in order to get ahead professionally, right? There is a lot of fear around queerness in my culture, unfortunately. And I do think that things are changing with the younger generation. I mean, like, People in Armenia, I think, are a lot more open. The younger generation is a lot more open, they're way more westernized in some ways, but it's the older generations that are, like, really, really sticking to a woman has to be a wife, a woman has to be in the kitchen, that a woman's place is with the kids, like, that's the only thing that they see. There's nothing wrong with it if that's what you want in your life, but if that's the only thing that you're allowing yourself to, uh, have, or the only way you're allowing yourself to live, that I mean, you're always gonna feel restricted. You're always gonna feel, unfulfilled, truly. But so we've talked a little bit about what queerness or how queerness is responded to in my culture. What about for you, Dana, growing up a Black American?
Yeah,
Did you receive any messaging about queerness in your community that sort of, uh, created the beliefs that you have, or had you push back against them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I am, from the American South, ostensibly. Both of my parents were born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. And so almost all branches of my family are Christian, African American, like slave descendant Black people, right? I think that just like in the Armenian community, Christianity is one of the backbones of our society, of our culture, of, how we experience community through the church is so important to Black Americans. And I think that because of that and the rhetoric that comes out of Christianity against homosexuality, there was a lot of homophobia growing up. Not from my household. Like my parents actually are like pretty cool about most things, even like things that for their age I thought were like impressive. They have no problem with trans people, genderqueer people. Like those are things that I think especially older generations really struggle with like accepting. And so I was always impressed with that. Beyond that, I would say my more extended family, there were definitely queer people in our family that were in the closet. I would call it like sort of a don't ask, don't tell situation where nobody discussed it. And then sometimes there would be like an outburst at a barbecue where somebody's like throwing around, homophobic epithets and things like that. And all of a sudden
Right.
the temperature in the room would change. And I would, as a kid, I would realize then, like, so there is something different about this person. They're identifying it and using it, like you said, as a weapon to, dismantle your belonging in the community. And so definitely there was a lot of like homophobia and almost always was related to religion. Like it's immoral, it's sinful, it will cause you to go to hell. My grandmother used to say, it's a sickness, like things like that. Now, when I got to like high school and started doing theater, I mean, there were queer kids there. Like it was not a situation where I felt like, "Oh my gosh, I, like, can't associate with this person because they're queer," even though I've heard this messaging sporadically throughout my life.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of my experience just as, like, an actor and an artist, like, in the performing arts is that I think it attracts people that are more accepting in general, that field, and
Yeah.
also just because you're examining the human experience as an art form, as an actor or a singer, you're interpreting songs, you're interpreting text, you're trying to get into the ideas and the thoughts and the feelings of someone outside yourself. I think that it's just easier to do that in everyday life when you're doing that as your passion, you know? And so, like, was pretty, like, you know, wanting to support the queer community pretty early on. And I've learned how to do that better and better over the years. And obviously there's far more information and literature and social media does a lot to help connect us. But like I said on a previous episode, all of our oppressions are linked. So to me, attacking a queer person doesn't matter if I identify as queer or not. It's like you're attacking me because anti-blackness, racism, misogyny, homophobia, they are all stemming from the same source. I think you said this previously, like all of our problems come from the same source, which is this patriarchal capitalistic society that we have. And it's children are all of these isms that are harming marginalized groups. I think that there's other like people within the Black community who are like vehemently homophobic. If you've
Mm.
looked up, certain churches, preachers, gospel singers, either even a lot of them have, quotes online about, really rejecting homosexual, not only people, but just the idea of homosexuality, that it's not real, that it's, one of my uncles once told me that being gay was a choice. And I was like, how? And he's like, love is a choice. It's a verb. And I was like,
Uh,
What does that prove? Like, it just how can you why would somebody choose to have their life be this much harder? Why would somebody choose to have their family members ostracize them? Why would they choose to get thrown out of their home? Like, no one would choose that. It behooves common sense. It's just something that you can tell yourself so you don't have to feel bad about being homophobic. I think there is nothing less Christian than being homophobic. To me, it is so anti-Christian. You are called by our Lord and Savior to accept, love, and break bread with people that are different from you. So to use the Bible, to use so-called rules that you didn't make, they're God's rules. So he didn't ask for enforcers. He asked for witnesses, not for us to be enforcers of his law. Why would you think God would want you to be cruel to other members of his creation? Like it's just, it's so ugly. And unfortunately, it's the Christian right that are the main proponents of this anti-queerness. And I think it really is just the religiosity of it. Like, when you said, like, how was your culture? Like, how did they respond to, queerness? What was the rhetoric you heard? It is so tied in with religion. And, you know, Black Americans, especially from the South, it is so overwhelmingly Christian
mm,
that that's where you get a lot of that from.
yeah.
But I'm glad I didn't grow up in a household that was super, like, anti-gay, because I just
Mm.
think that it's made me and a more open person, but also my life is better for all the queer people that I know, that I care about, that I'm friends with, and my life would not be what
Thank
it
you
is
for
without.
saying that.
I mean it, I say it because I mean it. My life would not be what it is, and I would not have enjoyed the past, 2 decades of my life if it weren't for the queer people in my life. So it is deeply offensive to me for people to be homophobic. And I often get into, even to this day, get into spats with family members about how vehemently pro queer I am. I think is part of it is because, like, I think people think, hey, I'm not voting against him. I'm not doing that bad. And I'm one of those people that's like, nope, don't even say that because that's offensive. Like, I'm really getting on people for, like, very subtle things that are homophobic that they're not even realizing are homophobic, and they
Good
feel
for
like
you
I
for using your voice.
"Oh, I use my voice all right." Not everybody is happy about it all the time. That's why I'm glad we have
And
this.
they won't be. And they won't be. And, I think that ties perfectly right back into openly going against the social norms of gender, sex, and expression. When you use your voice, when you express yourself truthfully, not everyone's gonna fucking like it. Not
Yeah,
everyone's gonna like it. And I think part of, coming back to this question that we asked before, living without fear is accepting that not everyone is going to like you for who you are and that you're deserving of taking up space and being loved regardless. And like I think one thing that came up for me as I became more open about my queerness, because again, it was never something I was hiding, it was just not something that I was so open about, was just accepting that the more that I am myself, the more of a magnet I will become towards the people, places, things, and opportunities that are actually meant for me, as opposed to pretending to be someone I'm not and then attracting opportunities that I don't resonate with, attracting
mm,
people that I don't resonate with because I'm not being true to myself.
that's
So,
fascinating. Yeah, you attract like attracts like, so if you're
like
inauthentic,
attracts like.
you're gonna attract inauthentic people. Yeah.
That's right. Well, Dana, thank you so much for having this conversation with me, for going so in depth on how we feel about queerness and giving me the space to share about my experience too.
No, I really appreciate you being so open and honest about your experience. And there are some parts of your story about coming out that I knew and some that I didn't. And so I just really want to applaud you for being so open because I think that it's important for other people to hear the experiences of others because it makes you know on a deeper level you are not by yourself. You are not the only one experiencing these issues. You're not the only person suffering. And I think that there's some, there's comfort in that. And so just by sharing your own experience, you've comforted many other people, you know, that are having to deal with, unfortunately, a society that is, not appreciating them in their wholeness and their fullness, which I
Mm,
know, I don't feel like the society appreciates me in my wholeness or my fullness. So I know what that pain is. And so I just applaud you for being so open.
thank you for saying that. And to those who are listening who might be questioning, who might be questioning who you really are and what it might be like for you to be more open about your identity and what the reality is and the potential consequences of being honest, like Riley, about, who you're really attracted to or what gender you really feel called to express yourself as, whether it's male, female, non-binary, gender fluid, neither, both, any and all. Just know that you are worthy of taking up space and that the more honest you are with yourself about who you are without shame, the more you're going to attract the right people and places and family and love and community towards you. So, yes, it was a little bit difficult um, during my transitional phase of leaving my marriage and being open about my queerness and just everything that came with that. Yes, it was hard. Yes, I did lose some friends. Yes, I did have to say goodbye to certain ways of living, but it also got exponentially fucking better when I did. My life got exponentially better. If you're questioning, God, is it just gonna suck? Maybe for a little bit, but can you have the bravery and the hope and the optimism that it's not for nothing? It's not all for nothing. It will lead you to your ultimate fulfillment and happiness. Hiding never leads to fulfillment, ever. So maybe we can close out with a little breath and a couple of affirmations. What do you think, Dana?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. As I said last time, if you're driving, please do not close your eyes. But if you are in a safe place, please let's close our eyes. Feel the seat beneath you. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose into the belly. Hold that breath for just a moment at the top. Relax your shoulders. Exhale through the mouth. Let's do one more. Inhale through the nose, nice and slow into the belly. Hold it at the top. Exhale through the mouth. Make a sound this time. And keep your eyes closed and let's say, I am deserving of living in my truth.
I am deserving of living in my truth.
As I live in my truth, I become a magnet for all things good.
As I live in my truth, I become a magnet for all things good.
Period, y'all.
Period. I love those affirmations. I would like to be a magnet for all things good. And if being able to express yourself authentically is what will get you there, and I think you've really identified what it takes to get to the other side, just like we were talking about with the semicolon in the beginning. There's
Semicolon girl. Bring it right back.
It's all full circle. When you're at that transitional point in the uncertainty of what's coming next, I thought that was so beautiful, like the way you talked about like coming out being that dangerous, scary process, but that what's on the other side is so bright. And that period is what I look forward to for myself and for everyone. So thank you so much for that. That was beautiful. If you want to connect with us, email us at healingloudlythepodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Instagram, TikTok. You can hear us wherever you get podcasts and shoot us a line and let us know what you think of this episode or any others and any thoughts that you have, questions, concerns, your experiences and thoughts about queerness, the masks we wear or unhealed men. So until next time, I'm Dana Skurlock.
I'm Ani Jajarian. We love y'all. We'll see you next time.